Okay, so now I just want to talk about what we are allowed to trade during the competition. So first let's just go over to my notes. So the first thing we're allowed to trade, and most obvious thing, are stocks. Okay, now this, oftentimes the word shares is used interchangeably with that. So if I buy stock in Tesla or if I buy shares of Tesla, that means the same thing. Okay. Now, the next thing we can trade are ETFs, which stands for Exchange Traded Funds, and then we can also trade ETNs, which stands for Exchange Traded Notes. We're also allowed to trade options after week 5, except one strategy is actually allowed during the start, so I'm just putting an asterisk there. And the last thing is we're eventually going to be able to trade options on indexes. Okay? So let's actually look at how you would search some of these things on the Thinkorswim app. So let's go up to here to Quick Quote. Okay? So to buy a stock, we just got to look it up. So let's look up SDC. So that stands for Smile Direct Club. And click on that. We're brought to this page. It has the price. It has the daily change. It has the sell button and the buy button, which includes the bid price and the ask price. So how much people are willing to sell it for and how much people are willing to buy for. Okay. Down here you have a bunch of information about the stock. This scrolls over so you can see some more stuff. Okay. And then down here you have the chart tab. This gives you sort of the daily price movements. You can click here to look at a different length of time or look at smaller candlestick increments. Here you have the news tab. This just gives you news that involves or is relevant to the stock. And over here you have the options tab. Now, this is the only way you'll ever find options, okay, is when you look up a stock, okay, and you click on the tab down here. This tab down here is where you buy and sell options on a stock. You'll never accidentally buy options because you always have to look up the stock and then specifically click on options to buy options. I'm going to get into options in a later video, but just know that this is where you find them. Okay. So next thing we can look up or we can trade our ETFs. So once this reconnects here, we're going to start with probably the most traded ETF, and that is SPY. So if we click on that, this is an index fund ETF, and what that means is this ETF, the price of it follows an index. Specifically, the index this one follows is the S&P 500 index. Okay. Now, an ETF is a diversified investment. It's a fund that in the fund has tons of different assets. So this specific ETF owns shares of every single S&P 500 company. Okay, so it moves with the S&P 500 index. Now there's different types of ETFs. There's index fund ETFs like this. There's ETFs that follow commodities. Okay, there's ETFs that follow precious metals. There's ETFs that follow specific sectors. Okay, like maybe you just want an ETF that follows semiconductors or drone technology. Okay, there's probably an ETF for those. Okay, now if you remember, you're not allowed to trade a lot of stuff. There's a few things you're not allowed to trade in this competition, like commodities and precious metals aren't allowed. But what you are allowed to do is trade ETFs that follow the prices of those things. So first, I'm just going to point out that an ETF trades just like a stock. Okay, the only difference is the price isn't quite as volatile. It doesn't change quite as quickly. So if we look here, once this reconnects again, so we're looking at the SPY ETF. You can see the price of it. This whole page looks just like the stock page. It even has options. You can trade options on ETFs as well. You have the sell and buy button. Oops, sorry. The sell and buy button with the bid and ask price. You have the daily change. You have the current price. You have all this information here about the ETF. Okay, so it trades just like a stock. Okay, so I'm going to show you an ETF called the GLD ETF. Okay, and this is an ETF that tracks or follows the price of gold. It follows 1/10 the price of gold. Okay, so even though you're not allowed to trade precious metals directly, you are allowed to trade ETFs that contain or that follow precious metals or anything that's banned, really. Any ETFs you're allowed to trade, okay, except for a couple exceptions with the no-risk ETFs, but you won't find those unless you're specifically looking for those. So you can see here, this again, this is this, you can buy and sell this just like a normal stock. Okay, so you can buy gold, this gold ETF, just like you would buy and sell a normal stock. It has all the same information. It even has options. Okay. Now, one of the next things you can exchange, is ETNs. So this here is an ETN. An ETN is kind of like an exchange traded bond. Okay. Now you're free to trade these. Again, these don't move super quickly. You buy and sell them just like a normal stock. Okay. A lot of them have options on them. They have the same information here in the middle. You have the price. Okay. And it's basically an exchange traded bond, but instead of like a bond, a bond gives interest payments, whereas a exchange traded note like this, the price just changes. Okay. So one of the last things you'll eventually be able to trade are options on indexes. So let's look up SPX. So SPX is the S&P 500 index. Okay. Now, at first it probably looks like you can buy and sell this, but if I actually click on buy, you'll see that this instrument cannot be traded. Okay. That's because it's an index. An index is just a number. What you can do, however, is you can trade options on it. Okay, and these are cash settled options. Now again, I'm going to get into how these work, but eventually you will also be able to trade these.